Thank you for being with us today. We have been doing this, I think, for about 2 years now. We have about 50 people so far that we have interviewed. So I'm delighted that you accepted our challenge.
We'll see.
And we have a series of questions that we would like to ask of you. And if we go a little bit too long, John, I'm going to tell you to...
Okay.
All right, that sounds great. For the camera, please, for our audience today, would you tell me your full name?
Edward John Bedford Allen.
Is that a namesake? You're named after somebody?
No, it's a sort of a British thing.
Okay. I won't ask any farther than that.
Right.
When you came to Plymouth, what year would it have been?
1968.
And at that time, would that have been Plymouth University, Plymouth State, Plymouth Teachers College?
Be PSC, Plymouth State.
Mm-hmm. All right, then. And you don't have to answer this question, but do you recall your first year's salary?
I do. $9,000.
All right. And what was the position that you held?
I think I was an assistant professor, but it was somewhat dependent, I think, I'm not really quite sure, on finishing the dissertation. It was an ABD.
Mm-hmm.
It's like many people.
Mm-hmm. And where were you getting this from? What university?
BYU,
All right.
although I'm not a Mormon.
Mm-hmm. All right. When you go back to Plymouth when you first came, can you recall the population, how large for the students?
I can't really. I seem to have in my mind something like 2,000, 2,500, but I don't really know.
Mm-hmm. No, that's all right. That's all right. And you probably don't have an answer on this one. This is more difficult. How many employees were here?
No idea.
I know. I just think that's interesting if I can find that out. So maybe I need to be the investigator a little bit. You came in 1968. When did you retire?
97.
97.
So I was here for 29 years.
Right. And you were a faculty member from the time you stepped on this campus?
Yeah.
And did you have professional experiences prior to coming to Plymouth?
Yes, I had taught in a private school in Switzerland. I had taught in a private school in Canada, and I had various assistantships at BYU.
Right. Do you mind me asking why you were in Canada? What brought you to the United States? I'm taking you back.
Yeah. There were many questions. I didn't like the school I was at particularly, so that was a major thing. However, I could have, tried out for some other school. Mm-hmm. However, by that time I was married and I had one child, mm-hmm. and so prior to that I'd lived a fairly wandering life, put it that way. And so it became pretty much apparent that if I wanted to teach, if I wanted to do something basically academic and so on, I would have to get a degree. In teaching, I didn't even have a BA. So you can do those things in private schools.
Wow.
And so, but why it was in America, why it was in the United States I came, I think probably because when I was 17, I had an exchange year to a private school in Connecticut, Loomis School. And so I had sort of American connections, as it were. And out of all the universities that I applied to for graduate work, BYU was by far the cheapest and offered me an assistantship, and it was sort of a done deal almost. I mean, I was lucky.
I would agree. That's why I went to where I went, because
you went where?
I went to BU.
Yeah.
Because they were going to give you a full thing.
Yeah, full ride. Yeah.
All right, let's see. During your tenure here, almost 30 years, what contact did you have with students?
Well, we had the 3 hours of office hours, and periodically when general contact. I don't know quite what else to say.
Some of us taught full-time, then we advised, and I can recall there was a discussion on campus. Some of the faculty members did not want to advise anymore, but we continued to do so. At one time I had 60 advisees, which I felt was a lot to give them the time that they needed.
Yeah.
I also did community work within the university, so I was in charge of a club.
Yeah.
I wanted the kids
Yeah,
to...
no, I didn't do any of that. And advising, I had advisees, I know that, but I can't honestly remember how many. It wasn't like you, 60. I mean, my God, how did you...
I was asked to do somebody else's.
Yeah.
Usually it was, I think, typical, we had about 30
Yeah.
in my department, but this
Yeah,
person...
you know, the history department was basically with numbers, basically in decline the entire time I was here.
Oh, I don't know that. Can you
Yeah.
share with me maybe the rationale for that?
Well, let me put it in context. When I first arrived here, it was unclear to me, certainly, and I think probably to everybody else, whether Plymouth State was going to be an educational establishment, a business school, or other. Because what had happened, and I was part of being hired for this, they wanted to build up the other. And if you look at the history department, pretty much within 4 or 5 years, the 2 historians were Bob Pugh and Jim Hogan. And then came almost immediately together Chong, Switzer, Sterling, Taylor, myself, and we were all hired, within 2 or 3 years of each other, and they were sort of building up the history department as a sort of a bulwark of the humanities.
Was there thought process, if we build it, they will come? The students will come?
I don't know. There was a whole sort of, I'm not sure what the thought process was, but it was that somehow there should be some humanities foundation which seemed to be lacking. Maybe it was in the English department, I don't really know, because there were more English teachers in those days than there were historians. And then, I can remember the first time I came into this library, and I was being told, or I had been told, I was to teach a course on Renaissance and Reformation, and I think there were 3 books. And I'd come from a library which there were 5 floors, and each floor was the size of a football field. So very luckily, Janice Gallinger, who was the librarian, was very pro-history. And I got talking with her, and I said, Janice, I can't teach a course there aren't any books. And she said, well, I'll give you a hand. And so I can remember coming in with just lists of books, and she was very good. And evidently she had money, assigned to build up the history department, and I got in there.
Wow, it's amazing. Let's see. Let's take you back for the first couple of years. What were they like? How busy were you during those first few years you were at Plymouth?
Mm-hmm. Well, extremely busy, partially to finish the dissertation. And I got that done within a year. I got the PhD finally in the next year in '69. And that was sort of what I had told Foley and Harold and so on. But that took, concentration. And then, of course, there's always the preparation of new courses, although Civ 1 and Civ 2, or Western Civ 1 and Western Civ 2, I can do that without even thinking about it, So.
All right, then. And then, am I correct, during those first few years, the population increased, the student population increased year by year by year?
Yes, I think so. Yes, I think so. I'm not really, I'm not really clear on that. What does stand out to me to sort of prove that was the sort of raising of the big student dormitories and so on. You know, they must be filled, so there was an increase in student population.
Well,
But at the same time, the seniors, I shouldn't say seniors, the students coming into history were declining, in fact. I mean, when I first came to an English history, and I'm not even sure that it wasn't a 2-semester course, I had probably 30 or 40 kids in there. Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. As a result of that, your faculty members rose as well? Did they have to hire more faculty members if the numbers?
The history department was amalgamated into the social science department. And that's really what, that caused some problems.
Wow.
Because the historians dominated, and the anthropologists particularly, or one of them, didn't seem to like that very much. But, yeah.
Did you have any other offers? If you did, why did you select Plymouth State?
Yeah.
Plymouth State College over others? The monies perhaps?
Yeah.
The location perhaps?
Yeah. I had other offers, very few. I must have sent out 80 or more than that letters. And I had 10 that were really interested, 5 that said, well, let's meet at the American Historical Society or come to our campus and so on. And in this particular case, in Plymouth's case, I had also an interview at Keene. And out in Utah, Keene had appeared to my wife and me as the better place. I don't quite know why, but it had appeared as the better place. And I went down there for an interview, and I had probably the most worst interview in my life. And that night, and the next day I was coming up to Plymouth to be interviewed again. That night I stopped in a motel on the way, and I got out my Vita, and I had answers for every single place that, I have great blanks in my Vita. I don't have a good Vita. And I had answers for that. And I came up here, and at that stage, Harold and so on lived in the Frost House just down there.
Right.
That was their office. And as I walked in at, I don't know, 9:30, whatever the hour was, Dave Switzer came out, who was the head. I didn't know that. And he said, "Oh, you must be John." I said, "Sure." And he said, "Well, I'll be seeing you later." I mean, it was just sort of a different world. And I got on quite well with John Foley. I didn't particularly get on with him afterwards, but at that time I did. And Harold seemed very pleasant, looking at me through his bushy eyebrows.
I'm thinking of John Foley, and came here in the PE department,
Yeah.
became a coach,
Yeah.
then becomes the dean,
Yeah,
and that's when you would have
yeah.
been an
He
associate.
was the dean when
Yeah.
I was here.
That's right.
And as I say, in the actual interview process, I got on very well with him.
Let's see. I'm going to take you away from the college just for a second and talk about the town. You crossed this green bridge way back when. There was a green bridge there. All right. It's been changed today. What were your thoughts of this town of Plymouth?
I was taken to have lunch at the what was it? The diner down on Main Street.
Frazier's?
Frazier's, yes.
Frazier's.
Yeah. And Switzer was there, and Chong was there. They'd been sort of delegated to deal, look after me for the day, I guess, or something like that. Mm-hmm. And then after that, Switzer had taken me up to where he was living, which was up on you go down South Main Street, and then turn right, and then up on Texas Hill Road. Mm-hmm. So I got a good sort of view of Plymouth before it shaped itself up, and I also got a good view of the environs. That is, where, particularly up in Texas Hill Road, where there are nice houses and all that sort of stuff. So having absolutely detested my time at Keene, I thought Plymouth was pretty good.
If that was the reason, good, thank you, Keen. Thank you, Keen. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this talk today. Let's see. I'm trying to think of the students right now. You had them for decades. Did you see a change in the students from when you came to when you left? When they were in your class, perhaps in outside activities, but especially in your classes?
Well, the first real vivid not problem, but situation that I had to deal with was the Vietnam War, where the students closed the college down, basically, no exams. And I found myself being asked to go up to one of the dormitories up here and, you know, tell them all about revolution and things like that. And this was sort of totally, I had no training in that at BYU, that's for sure. But it was sort of interesting. And in fact, they were far more interested in what I said up in their dormitory than they were, you know, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 o'clock.
But this was reality for them.
Yes, very much so.
I remember the day that the draft occurred.
Yeah.
I remember sitting in front of the TV. I'm a student, college student, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, the numbers of my friends that went away.
Yeah.
That was a scary time, and I think the younger folks
Yeah.
couldn't put that in perspective, although maybe their father or their grandfather had been in World War I or World War II, but wow,
Right.
wow, it's amazing, wow. Let's see. Think about it. In reflection, what kind of an influence did you have on this campus, with your faculty members perhaps, and definitely with students? What kind of an influence did you have?
Well, it's like sort of patting yourself on the back here.
I was just going to say, don't be humble. I was just going to tell you that, sir.
I don't think very much, looking back on it. I think I was always just slightly suspect, largely because my dissertation was on the Renaissance, or something to do with the Renaissance. And in 1976, while I was supposed to be writing, I had a sabbatical, and I was supposed to be writing a sort of a second book based on, sort of following on the first one. And that sabbatical changed my direction entirely, because I got absolutely fed up with what I was doing, largely because I didn't have the stamina, interest to get my Latin up. I'd had Latin when I was 12, 13. I can do hic, haec, hoc, and all that sort of stuff, but and to write this second book, I would have absolutely had to have good Latin, and it just wasn't interesting. That coincided at the same moment in Innsbruck. We were in Austria, and that coincided with going to an exhibition of old skiing prints, and I came out of that exhibition. It was very, very small, maybe a room, 3-4 times the size of this, so maybe 50 pictures. I came out of that room saying, wow, this is interesting. These people weren't doing what I ski, like I ski, and I sort of started looking around for stuff and couldn't find anything. Then I started looking around for articles that people might have written. There were none. There were a lot of newspaper journalists out there over the years, but all of a sudden I found that there was a sort of a niche in academia. So coming back to Plymouth, and I must say I played on this. Our department meetings were on Wednesday afternoons, and my schedule allowed me to ski about 2 or 3 hours beforehand, so I'd always go into department meetings in ski clothes, and the political scientists particularly didn't like that. And of course I did it on purpose.
And then from there, did you not author a book on skiing?
Oh, I've written 15 of them.
Oh, excuse me. All right.
Yeah, the latest one is or I won't say the latest one, I hope the new ones, as the Chinese are going to translate it. So it's actually a 2007 book I did for UMass Press. Yeah.
And if I wanted to get hold of some of your publications, where would I go?
Lamson
I'm
Library.
gonna be your agent,
Lamson
I know.
Library, and then you won't have to buy them.
So that's been your passion?
Yes.
Yes, very much so, very
Yeah,
much so.
and I gave an oral history course having to do with skiing, and I got about 10 or 12 students and sent them out to all sorts of people. Sherman Adams, for example, one of them went to.
Loon Mountain.
Right.
Very
So,
good.
and then in those days, this is 1980s mostly, because there was nothing written on that, on the history of skiing, it was open book. Open book. And I probably had about 2, maybe 3 articles rejected. That's all. The rest
Yeah.
all went through.
Wow,
Oh, my
amazing, amazing. You
Yeah.
were the right person at the right time.
Yeah, it seemed to be that way, and you know, I'm lucky. I speak French and German, and I took a course in Norwegian. And if you have German, Norwegian is not very difficult and stuff like that. Yeah.
Michael told me that you were in the service, the military.
Yes.
Would you share that? I don't ordinarily ask that question for the Plymouth State folks, but
Yeah. In England, this is 1952, 52 to 54. In those days, there was what was called national service. You had to join unless you were a conscientious objector or something like that. I joined the King's Shropshire Light Infantry, basic training. Then I was sent to a sort of a pre-would-be officers school, and then I was sent to the officers training school, where they take you for 120 days and turn you out as a second lieutenant. And then you basically had a choice. Most people who went into this system remained in the regiment or artillery unit or whatever it was. But I thought it'd be exciting to go parachuting, so I did that.
wow,
That was fun.
wow.
Well, you know, you was a kid. I was 18, for God's sake.
That's why my wow is there, I guess.
I spent a year in Egypt.
As a result of that,
Yeah.
during the service.
Yes, yes, yeah. Well, that's where the paras were deployed. It was,
I'm going to run way back. Where were you born?
in the UK, up in the Lake District, but the first 2 years of my life were spent in India. Well, actually, today's Pakistan, but in those days it was the Raj. This is 1933 to 35, India.
Wow. I don't want you to be humble on the next one. All right? If you talked about what you think you've done at Plymouth, but is there a major contribution that you have given Plymouth as a result of your time here, your expertise?
Yeah. Well, I think I don't have any measure of this, but I would like to think that all the books that I've written on skiing always basically mention Plymouth, and frequently, in fact I'd almost say 100%, not quite maybe, I mention particularly Mike Cosmer and his group of students, because that's what I'm going to see him about afterwards. I'm going to ask him to do something having to do with skiing. but you know, so I hope that, and also I also always, of course she's left now, Joyce up in Interlibrary Loan. I couldn't exist here without Interlibrary Loan.
Joyce Bruce. Joyce Bruce.
Yes, that's right. Yes, yeah. I mean, she was wonderful.
And I think she told me that about you, just so you know that.
Okay.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And now Mike's name is in the history books, because you just mentioned it, Mike Cosmo.
I-
Was there one or two people that you want to say thank you to that may have supported you when you first came here? They may no longer be with us.
Yeah, well, Dave Switzer certainly. It was curious. He was he only just arrived, and yet he was the department chair. I mean, it was, you know, you either went with Pugh or Hogan, who'd been here sort of filling in, and Pugh was very, very nice guy, but he had some problems. And I don't know quite how Dave found himself being put in charge, but he did. And then, curiously, Dave was again the department chair when I retired, which is sort of, if you like those sort of things all buttoned up, this
That's
is
really
pretty good.
That's really neat.
So,
From your perspective, from the beginning to the end of your tenure here, how has Plymouth changed, the university?
was much larger for a start. And I have been outside the changes that have taken place since Donald Bierce was here. And my information about the way Plymouth has been going comes almost entirely from librarians. Because those are the only, it's not quite true to say those are the only people that I really talk to. I do talk to the historians, or one or two of them every once in a while. But basically it comes from the librarians, and you probably know how they feel about it.
Next. What haven't we covered today? Thinking back, you've spent these decades here at this university. You lived within this community for so long. And where do you live now, if you don't mind me asking?
In Rumney. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When I first arrived here, I was academically ambitious. And I can remember saying to my wife, you know, we'll be here a couple of years and then we'll see. And within those couple of years, this was such a nice place. And the history department was extremely pleasant, with a bunch of extremely pleasant people. That changed a little bit towards the end, but at least from my point of view. And also, and that's why we're still here. I mean, you know, I've been retired for I don't know how long anyway. So, I mean, we wouldn't have been here if we didn't like it so much. And it so happened that the house we bought was wonderfully placed for the kids. I have 3 kids. Pretty much bang, 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 one after the other. But they could ride their bicycles to friends. They could, you know, I could take off my shirt on Sunday mornings in the Baptist. I hope you're not Baptist. The Baptist wouldn't mind. I mean, wouldn't know about it, you know. So it was, and that's why we stayed. And the college towns are good places to be because of all the things that go on. I mean, and you can choose and has troubles when one gets older. I can't go to a David Sedaris lecture anymore because I get the sort of the entryway into the joke, and then I can't understand because I can't hear right. Can't understand the real point of it.
I think what you have just shared has been so commonplace with people that we're interviewing right now, is we're going to come here for a couple of years and then we'll go someplace else.
Yeah.
And they find out it's a great fit, both the university and the town that they're in, regardless of which town they're in. It's a good fit for their kids, the school they have to go to.
Yeah. And you know, we are, I mean, part of my whole life has been, and my wife too, has been skiing. And so this is a good place to be. I mean, it's not as good as Aspen or Vail or what have you, but
you have your choice of.
Yes, indeed. Mm-hmm. And for us, my wife is German, and for us, although we didn't think about this at the time, but it turned out that it was really very easy to get to Europe. You know, you take a bus right to Logan. You don't, I mean, and off you go. Mm-hmm. And she still has 2 sisters over there and stuff. I don't have anybody left, or I have an odd second or third cousin or something.
John, do you still ski? Do you still ski?
Well, yes, not really. I mean, I mow tracks in the field, and when 2 or 3 inches of snow come, we put on our skis and we say we're skiing, but it's just walking along, really.
I mean, after all those books and your passion for it,
Right.
you should be skiing at how old? How old are you?
I'm 90. So you know, you give out. That's the reason why we just go on the flats.
That's what we have to look forward to. We
Yeah.
give out.
Yes.
I want to continue, and I want to thank you for
Okay.
sharing information today. I think our purpose from the very beginning has been to save some of the history,
Yeah.
how things have evolved over time. And the most important thing when I look back, thinking what is Plymouth State today, it's always the people. And that's why the first phase of this project, if we ever get to phase 2, we don't know. But the first phase has always been the people that are here,
Yeah.
regardless of the role that they play.
Yeah. Did you get Sterling before you died?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
twice.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, very fun. I did one for the town because he had been here so
Yeah,
long, and I
right.
also did him.
Right.
Yeah. We've been very lucky, but we should have started this another 10 years ago as we're reflecting on it, because there's a handful of people we would love to
Right.
have sitting here talking to us now.
Yeah.
But at that time, 10 years ago, I was still working, and
Yeah.
that took priority.
That's difficult stuff to bring
Yeah.
in, right?
Yeah, it
I
is.
know.
Yeah, this has been fun.
Okay,
Just-
great.
A lot of people will say, they're gonna look at some of our videos, they're gonna say, I had him as an instructor, or that person helped me when I was in Spear. And that's gonna take all those students back, I think, too, which is really important.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Great.
so thank you for coming
Okay.
in.